The sharp sound of metal grinding against metal echoed through the quiet Tuesday afternoon on Maple Ridge Drive. From my living room window, I could see Diane Peterson, our HOA president, crouched beside my mailbox, an electric drill in hand. Her perfectly styled blonde hair bounced as she worked the drill bit into the lock, unaware that a small black lens inside the mailbox was recording her every move. What Diane didn't know was that she wasn't tampering with just any mailbox. She was meddling with federal property, equipped with surveillance technology that would soon alter her life forever. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Marcus Thompson, and I moved to the Oakwood Heights subdivision 6 months ago after retiring as a cybersecurity contractor for the Department of Defense. My career had taught me to value my privacy, and when I purchased my home, I enrolled in a little-known federal program that provides enhanced security measures for former government contractors, including a mailbox with built-in surveillance capabilities. From the moment I moved in, Diane Peterson made it clear she didn't like me. The first knock on my door came just 3 days after I arrived. She stood on my porch with a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She told me my moving truck had been parked on the street for 6 hours, violating HOA Code 7.3.2. The fine, $75. When I explained that I was still unloading, she simply tapped her clipboard and said the rules applied to everyone, no exceptions. Her fixation on my mailbox grew from there. 2 weeks later, the federal program installed a sturdy black metal box with a reinforced lock system. It looked different from the standard beige boxes lining our street, and Diane couldn't stand it. She left notices on my door daily, each one escalating in tone. First, it was a friendly reminder about approved mailbox styles. Then came formal warnings, followed by threats of legal action if I didn't replace it within 7 days. I tried explaining that the mailbox was government property, installed through an official program, but Diane dismissed me. She insisted that HOA rules superseded any government program. Her eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of wielding power over a suburban kingdom of 300 homes. The harassment intensified. Diane photographed my yard at 6 a.m., measuring the grass height with a ruler. She cited me for having my garbage cans visible from the street for 10 minutes after pickup. She even complained that my doorbell was 2 decibels too loud. Each violation came with fines ranging from $50 to $200. My neighbors began sharing their stories. Tom Martinez, who lived 2 houses down, told me that Diane had forced him to repaint his house 3 times because the shade of blue wasn't quite right. Sarah Williams, across the street, had been fined for having her grandchildren's bikes in the driveway for just 30 minutes. Everyone had a Diane story, but no one dared challenge her. She had been HOA president for 8 years and had connections with local attorneys who specialized in HOA enforcement. Things came to a head last Monday when Diane showed up at my door with 2 other board members. She announced that they had voted to forcibly remove my mailbox if I didn't comply within 24 hours. I calmly informed her that tampering with a federal mailbox was a felony, punishable by up to 3 years in prison and fines of up to $250,000. Diane laughed in my face, claiming no jury would convict her for maintaining neighborhood standards. That evening, I called my former colleague at the Postal Inspection Service, Agent Rebecca Chen. I explained the situation and asked what my options were. Rebecca took the threat seriously and reminded me that the surveillance system in my mailbox was actively monitored. Any tampering would trigger a federal investigation. She advised me to document everything and let the system do its job. Tuesday morning came with an eerie calm. I pretended to leave for errands, but parked around the corner and walked back through the greenbelt behind my house. At exactly 10:15 a.m., Diane's white Lexus pulled up to my curb. She stepped out with a large tool bag, looking around to ensure the coast was clear. Most neighbors were at work, and she knew it. I positioned myself at my living room window and watched as she unpacked her tools. First came the drill, then a pry bar, and finally a hammer. She attacked the lock with the drill, then resorted to the pry bar and hammer when that didn't work fast enough. Throughout the entire process, she had her phone wedged between her shoulder and ear, chatting with her sister in Portland. Her voice carried across the quiet street as she bragged about teaching me a lesson and showing who really ran the neighborhood. She laughed about how the cops wouldn't care about a mailbox dispute and how her attorney would handle any complaints I might file. What Diane didn't realize was that every strike of her hammer, every turn of her drill, and every word of her conversation were being recorded by the surveillance camera inside the mailbox. The tamper evidence sensors had already triggered an alert to the Postal Inspection Service the moment she touched the lock. As she finally pried open the door and peered inside, her face was captured in perfect clarity by the internal camera. She spent another 10 minutes rifling through my mail before finally trying to close the damaged door. When it didn't cooperate, she shrugged, gathered her tools, and drove away, leaving my federal property destroyed and my mail exposed. I waited exactly 1 hour before calling Agent Chen back. She had already received the automatic alert and reviewed the footage. Her voice was professional, but I could hear the satisfaction as she said, "This is one of the clearest cases of federal mail tampering I've seen in years." She assured me that a team would be dispatched immediately. The next morning brought a scene straight out of a crime drama. 2 black suburban vehicles pulled up to Diane's house at 7 a.m. Federal agents in navy windbreakers with postal inspection badges knocked on her door. I watched as Diane, in her silk pajamas, shifted from annoyance to confusion to absolute terror when they presented their credentials and a search warrant. The agent spent 3 hours at her house. When they emerged, they had several evidence bags, including what appeared to be the tools she had used on my mailbox. Diane was escorted out in handcuffs, still in her pajamas, but now with slip-on shoes hastily added. As they guided her to the vehicle, she caught sight of me on my porch. The look on her face, a mix of rage and disbelief, was something I'll never forget. Word spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Within hours, my doorbell rang constantly as neighbors wanted to know what had happened. The HOA board called an emergency meeting that evening. I attended, along with about 200 other residents, more than had ever shown up to a meeting before. The board's attorney explained that Diane had been charged with destruction of federal property and obstruction of mail delivery. He stressed that her actions were taken as an individual, not as a representative of the HOA, though he admitted the association might face civil liability. The federal investigation took an unexpected turn the following week. While analyzing the evidence from Diane's house, investigators discovered something shocking. In her home office, they found boxes of mail that didn't belong to her. It turned out, my mailbox wasn't the first one she'd tampered with. She had been stealing mail from residents she didn't like for years, including credit card statements, checks, and even birthday cards containing cash. The identity theft charges alone carried a potential sentence of up to 15 years in federal prison. Combined with the destruction of federal property and mail tampering charges, Diane was facing serious time. Her attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the evidence was overwhelming. The surveillance footage from my mailbox showed her clearly committing multiple federal crimes while bragging about it on the phone. The trial lasted only 3 days. The prosecution presented video evidence, testimony from dozens of neighbors, and the boxes of stolen mail found in Diane's house. Her defense attorney tried to argue that she was simply an overzealous HOA president, but the jury wasn't convinced. They deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. At sentencing, the judge didn't hold back. He called Diane's actions a gross abuse of power and a violation of public trust. Her position as HOA president only made her crimes worse, as she had used her authority to terrorize her neighbors while enriching herself through stolen mail. The sentence was harsh. 8 years in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, and restitution payments to all affected residents totaling over $300,000. Diane's face went pale as the judge read the sentence. She swayed on her feet, gripping the defense table for support. Her perfect composure finally cracked as she broke down in tears, begging the judge for leniency. But it was too late. The bailiffs approached to take her into custody, and her sobs echoed through the courtroom as they led her away.